Shabbat shalom. Okay, now you can hear me. So, do we go back to normal now? It's a question I asked myself on Monday night after our exuberant Simchat Torah celebration. So much of that evening felt normal. The kids running around with their flags, hearing the last and first words of our Torah scroll, the Israeli dancing, those yummy cookies we had, and that sigh of relief from your clergy, having made it to the end of the High Holy Day season. So do we go back to normal? The short answer is no and yes, and I don't really know yet. It's too soon to begin the process of reflection from these past 2 years. Too soon because 19 hostage bodies still remain separate from their families. Too soon because wounds are still open. Too soon because our relationships have changed. Too soon because we are anxious that these fragile shards of peace may disappear before our very eyes. And I really don't know what normal means anymore. But I do know that Judaism gives us the gift of regularity, of routine and of law and of custom. This is what has guided us through every generation of our people. And so as I watched the videos of the living hostages returning to their families this week, it felt right, even Bereshit, meant to be, that this Shabbat we begin our weekly Torah reading Bereshit from the very beginning again. This Parsha is so rich and deep, we could study it every single week for an entire year and only scratch the surface. Genesis tells our origin story and its many complications: jealousy and temptation, blame and violence, division, regret, punishment, free will, and predestination. Tonight I want to talk about two pairs of humans in our Parsha, the first couple and the first set of siblings. While they have different stories, both can teach us about responsibility for ourselves and for each other, and ultimately for the world in which we live. So you know this first story. God creates the world and everything in it, human beings, creates a day of rest, and places those human beings in the Garden of Eden. Tells them they can eat from any tree they want except from the tree in the middle of the garden. And like every single human being that comes after them, they are most interested in the thing that they're not supposed to do. Rabbi Asher Wassertheil, an Israeli educator who built the religious Zionist school system, noted that when God asks Adam if he ate from the tree of knowledge, Adam refuses to take responsibility. He actually refuses to answer the question. God asks, "Did you eat from the tree?" Adam says, "That woman you put at my side, she gave me the fruit of the tree, and the serpent, he tricked me." Adam chooses blame over loyalty, shifting the responsibilities of his actions onto other people. But this is not what God wanted from Adam. In fact, only verses earlier, God declares that it is not good for Adam to be alone. Chava, Eve, is created as Adam's partner and helpmate. Chava's role as good continues in her offering Adam the fruit. Genesis says, when the woman saw that the tree was good for eating, she gave some to her partner who was with her, and he ate. Even though it was against God's command, Chava, Eve's motivation for sharing the fruit with her husband, came from a desire to share something good with him. But Adam, in contrast, blames her. Their partnership, because of this, is permanently altered from one of a shared responsibility into a dynamic of desire and of domination. Rabbi Avital Hochstein from the Hadar Institute in New York suggests that from this we learn two different models of partnership. The first is based on responsibility, sharing the good, acknowledging error, and remaining what we call for Eve a fitting counterpart, living in the joy of partnership. The second is based on blame, standing righteous alone at the cost of domination, sorrow, and fracture. Now, if you're thinking, okay, but Adam is justified in his anger. After all, Eve gave him the fruit. But in stating this, he violates something deeper, the mutual respect that makes relationships possible. As long as I define myself as blameless and define another as guilty, I destroy the shared space between us. But Genesis teaches us otherwise. It's not to be that we are a temptation or a threat, but that in partnership there is an opportunity for goodness. God's purpose in creating a second human being was life with a partner, with a helpful counterpart. To blame another is to warp that purpose, denying the foundation of companionship. Adam's not entirely wrong to say that Eve gave her the fruit, and Eve is not entirely wrong to say that the snake deceived her, and yet both fail by refusing to admit their own role. Perhaps then it's no surprise that Adam and Eve's sons inherit their parents' inclination for blame and the lack of respect. You may be familiar with the story as well. After they are kicked out of the garden, Adam and Eve create and bear 2 sons. But from the very start, we see the way that Adam and Eve parent their children differently. It says, she, Chava, became pregnant and gave birth to Cain, saying, God and I have created this child. In the next sentence, which we assume is many years later, we read, she continued giving birth to his brother Abel. Abel gets no name explanation. He's actually only referred to as Cain's brother. The rabbis notice that Abel in Hebrew, Hevel, means mist or breath, something that is difficult to notice and easy to ignore. We don't actually know very much about Cain and Abel, but from the little bit we know, they are not set up to be the best of friends. They choose different careers, Abel as a farmer, Cain as a shepherd. They are asked to bring an offering before God. Cain and Abel both bring the fruits of their labors. Abel a lamb without blemish, Cain a basket of his fresh produce. And for reasons we do not know, Cain's offering is rejected by God. He falls on his face, embarrassed and ashamed. Upon reading this, we have something that actually only happens once in the entire Torah, which is a place where something is missing. The text says, Cain says to his brother Abel, and when they were in the field, Cain came upon his brother Abel and killed him. Something is missing. What did Cain say to his brother Abel before he raised his hand? In many English translations, there's actually an ellipsis to show that we don't know what was supposed to go there. In Hebrew, there's actually a word for this. It's called a lacuna. And the rabbis go to great pains to try and fill in this missing piece of the narrative. In one midrash, they imagine an argument between the brothers. They say, let us divide up the world. One took the land and one took the animals. One said, the land you are standing on is mine. The other said, the clothes you are wearing is mine. One said, get off my land. The other said, take off those clothes. And in the course of this, Cain rose up against Abel and killed him. In a later midrash, the rabbis imagine a different conversation. Both took land and both took animals. So what were they arguing over? One said, on my land shall the temple be built. And the other one said, On my land the temple will be built." In the course of this argument, Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and killed him. This midrash expands on the sibling rivalry, filling this lacuna, this gap, with the expansion of territory, power, and even where God's presence will rest. And of course, if Abel's murder was because of a dispute over where the temple in Jerusalem should be, it is a painful reminder of the many disputes that would come to be about that land. After the murder, God's voice appears asking Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" And he responds with a verse that is seared into our collective consciousness. "Am I my brother's keeper?" There are times when I read these stories and cringe. Even the first human beings were rebellious and stubborn, mostly thinking about their own legacy, not even trying to hide their willingness to throw their wife or their brother under the proverbial bus. They are so much like us today. I wonder how we can read these stories not as a mirror for our own weaknesses and shortcomings. And then there are times like this week when I am comforted by the reminder that we are just as flawed as our ancestors, that responsibility may be something we're born with, and yet it needs to be nurtured over time. We are born with so much goodness, but human nature often motivates us to act from a place of selfishness and fear. We really like being right. We want to be right so much that we actually become self-righteous. So we ask again, do we go back to normal now? I think a better question might be, what is our new normal? I pray that it is a normal where we do not act like Adam, blaming Chava for his mistakes. It's a normal where we don't act like Cain, who ignored the cries of his brother. Rather, a normal where we learn from our ancestors, where we show responsibility for our actions, for our mistakes, for our shortcomings and our missteps, and where we hold them with communal kindness and compassion. And a new normal where we remember that each one of us was, is, and will be created b'tselem Elohim in the image of the divine, unique, irreplaceable, godly, and perfect. That each of us, those we love and those we don't, those we know, those we don't, the Adams and the Eves, the Cains and the Abels, each of us beloved, each of us a whole world. May this week be a beginning of beginnings for peace and for healing. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to return to our prayer books, page 200.